am Eleanor, and the moment my life fractured and then violently reconstructed itself began in the suffocating, dusty silence of my late father's private study, precisely 2 weeks after his formal funeral. My father, Dr. Alastair Vance, a brilliant but profoundly eccentric classics professor, had left behind a void that his widow, my stepmother Vera, was already scrambling with frightening speed and total disregard to fill, with his substantial wealth and rare artifacts. Vera, a woman defined entirely by her brittle synthetic elegance, an acute, insatiable financial hunger, and a complete lack of intellectual depth, had chillingly claimed the final, critical will was irretrievably lost, assuring me I would inherit nothing but a handful of insignificant sentimental items. I had quietly, miserably accepted this grim fate, knowing my father always favored avoiding painful, drawn-out confrontation over protecting his legacy. But as I performed a final, melancholy sweep of his study, my hand brushed against a peculiar object, a small, leather-bound notebook tucked cleverly into the spine cavity of a valuable first edition, marked by his distinctive spidery handwriting. The inscription on the cover read, simply, "Property of Alastair Vance. Not a diary. Do not read." The heavy book it was hidden in was a battered, annotated copy of F. Scott Fitzgerald's The Great Gatsby, shelved conspicuously under the library section marked Fiction. I pulled out the notebook, my heart pounding with a sudden, wild, desperate hope that threatened to overwhelm me. Opening it, I didn't find notes on Greek philosophy. I found meticulously coded instructions, the first cryptic line reading, "The truth, Eleanor, is always hidden in the story." This wasn't a notebook. It was a cryptic map left specifically and intentionally for me, leading to a profound secret I was certain Vera did not and could not know. The cryptic notebook was instantly more valuable than any sum of money, representing a final, brilliant intellectual game designed by my deceased father not just to test my deductive mind, but to secure my rightful, earned legacy against a clear, predatory enemy. The first page contained not flowing text, but a dense series of precise, random-looking dates, obscure Dewey Decimal System numbers, and heavily underlined references to specific, rarely known lines of poetry. A complex cipher that only a literature scholar like myself, steeped in Alastair's academic world, could even begin to approach unraveling. Vera had been systematically and aggressively looting the house, claiming sentimental disposal of expensive artifacts and rare books, but she had disastrously overlooked this intellectual key hidden in plain sight. My father knew Vera possessed zero intellectual curiosity. She would never look beyond the obvious, the expensive, or the sentimental value of things. The stakes immediately escalated from disappointment to high-stakes warfare against a formidable opponent. This was not just about inheritance. It was about honoring my father's final, desperate act of trust and love in me, his intellectual heir. I realized he hadn't carelessly lost the will. He had masterfully hidden it, accurately predicting Vera's predatory greed and anticipating her every move. I had to solve his elaborate literary puzzle before Vera sold the contents of his entire precious library, thereby irrevocably destroying the physical trail forever. The emotional core of this challenge was the agonizing, motivating thought that my father had died isolated, forced to communicate the vital truth through complex codes to prevent his own wife from stealing his intellectual and financial legacy, a betrayal I vowed to correct with extreme prejudice. My initial attempt to decipher the intricate code, performed in secret under the harsh glow of my reading lamp late that night, confirmed the worst. The instructions were not a simple linear path but a complex, interconnected web of academic references designed to frustrate. Each line was a vital clue, referencing specific obscure editions and rarely cited publication dates I needed to meticulously cross-reference using the university library database. I immediately recognized the first essential clue, a reference to a specific, emotionally charged stanza concerning fractured memory in T.S. Eliot's epic poem The Waste Land, which led me to a worn, heavily annotated copy of Eliot's collected works, marked with a specific, obscure Dewey Decimal number, 821.912. I rushed back to the study shelf, pulled the book with trembling, purposeful hands, and found a single antique library checkout card inside, entirely covered in my father's distinctive, familiar spidery handwriting. The card contained only one entry, a name and a number. The name was The Oracle, a direct reference to Greek tragedy's search for truth. The number was the call number for an entirely different, seemingly unrelated book. Herman Melville's colossal novel Moby Dick. This was a literary scavenger hunt designed to infuriate and deliberately mislead any casual, non-academic reader, but it immediately electrified my scholar's mind. The new hook. This wasn't just a simple hiding place. The will itself was hidden in a vast, anonymous public place. A specific local branch of the public library, a realm Vera would never ever step foot in due to her ingrained disdain for anything non-commercial or non-exclusive. My father had used the vast, anonymous network of the public library system as his final, unbreachable vault against her greed, trusting the anonymity over any vault. The investigation immediately moved out of the safe, quiet confines of my father's study and into the labyrinthine world of the city library system, a realm of order, logic, and intellectual calm I was intimately familiar with. My father's coded checkout card led me directly to the central branch, where, after a tense few minutes spent searching the old catalog cards and cross-referencing call numbers, I located the specific, hard-to-find, and long-uncirculated edition of Moby Dick. The heavy book was ancient, smelled strongly of mildewed paper and dust, and felt perfectly placed, undisturbed for decades. I flipped frantically to the page corresponding to the number on the checkout card, and there, taped securely beneath a dense, philosophical passage about Captain Ahab's destructive obsession, was a single, small, laminated card. This card was not the will. It was the next, crucial step. A membership card for an obscure, private literary society my father had founded decades ago, known only as the Manuscript Club. The card had a specific, crucial date stamped on it. Tomorrow, 7 p.m., at a location listed only by precise coordinates, a final layer of military-grade encryption requiring geolocation skills. The stakes rose exponentially. I was no longer hunting for a static, fragile document. I was being drawn into a living, breathing network of my father's intellectual allies and protectors. I realized my father had not trusted any single, easily intimidated lawyer. He had trusted a brotherhood of eccentric, brilliant friends to hold the final secret until I arrived and proved my competence. I had to attend the meeting, ready to be judged by his most trusted peers, knowing their approval was everything. The following evening, fighting intense, crippling nerves and wearing my best professional attire to project competence, I located the obscure coordinates, which led me to the back room of a beautifully aged, independent bookstore nestled deep within the university district's quieter streets. Inside, a solemn group of 6 impeccably dressed, stern older academics, 3 men and 3 women, were seated around a heavy mahogany table, sipping deep red port from delicate crystal glasses, their faces a mixture of skepticism, intellectual challenge, and profound relief when they saw me enter the room. They were the Manuscript Club, the living pieces of the puzzle. The moment I presented the laminated card, their reserved, scholarly demeanor dissolved instantly. The twist: they were not holding the will, but they were the legally designated witnesses, and they had been testing me with the clues, ensuring I was worthy of the legacy. My father, fearing Vera would torture his legal team for the document's location, had entrusted each member with a single, specific paragraph of his final wishes, which they had meticulously memorized word for word, functioning as living, sentient pages of the will itself. I had to collect their collective testimony, proving I was the rightful recipient by solving the literary puzzle on the spot. The stakes were impossibly high. They would only recite their critical portion if I could instantly and correctly name the specific obscure literary work their assigned paragraph was drawn from. My deep academic knowledge of classic literature was now the uncrackable security password to my entire inheritance, placing my formal education under sudden, immense scrutiny. I spent the next 3 excruciating, mentally dizzying hours in a high-pressure scholarly exam that felt more intimidating and demanding than any final doctoral defense I had ever imagined, realizing my future hinged on recognizing obscure passages. The 6 members, each in turn reciting their memorized, coded paragraph of my father's final will, demanded the original book and the author for immediate verification. Mr. Fitzwilliam started with a dense, lyrical passage on social disillusionment and the nature of self-discovery. I instantly recognized Hermann Hesse's seminal work Siddhartha. Mrs. Albright followed, reciting a flowery, ironic paragraph concerning the nature of romantic certainty and societal expectations. I confidently named Jane Austen's classic Sense and Sensibility. With each correct instant answer, a piece of the will, a key clause, a financial designation, a trust name, was recorded meticulously onto my silver voice recorder. The emotional core of the evening was overwhelming, realizing the immense, fragile trust my father had placed in my intellectual capability. He hadn't just left me money. He had powerfully affirmed my value as his intellectual heir, challenging me one last time with a shared knowledge we held dear. The final twist. The last member, an elderly, quiet gentleman named Silas, recited the single most crucial paragraph, the one detailing the exact physical location of the final signed will. His excerpt was a philosophical rumination on reality and the nature of perception drawn from Miguel de Cervantes' Don Quixote. I confirmed the author, and Silas smiled faintly, his eyes twinkling with final secret knowledge. The original will, Eleanor, is definitively hidden in a book of fiction. The location is now yours to find within my words, he whispered, ending the trial. The hidden location, once quickly decoded from Silas's cryptic paragraph, was shockingly direct yet perfectly symbolic of my father's dry, academic humor. The original document sleeps with the king who never ruled, beneath the pages of his story, where history failed. I instantly recognized the profound literary and historical reference. The biography of Edward VIII, the monarch who scandalously abdicated the British throne for love and thus never officially became king, a life defined by what-if and non-action. I rushed back to the main library branch, now closing for the night, this time heading not to the classics, but to the non-fiction biography section. The irony was palpable and deeply satisfying. The final legal will was physically hidden in the most factual non-fiction genre, marked only by a clue hidden in the fictional, allegorical world of fiction. I found the appropriate, thick, official biography, slipped my hand between the center pages, and there it was, the folded, official, signed, and professionally witnessed final will of Alastair Vance, pristine and intact. The stakes were resolved. The will existed, and I held the absolute proof of my inheritance and my father's love. The contents were immediately clear. Everything, including the valuable first editions, the major family trust, and the intellectual property rights, was left explicitly to me. Vera received only a minimal, non-negotiable annuity designed merely for her comfortable living expenses. But the immediate overriding challenge remained. Vera, still utterly unaware of my success, had scheduled a professional moving company to aggressively clear out the entire estate library the next morning at 8 a.m. sharp. I had to file the will immediately to prevent the imminent destruction of all physical evidence and the loss of the estate's true value. I worked through the entire night, fueled by adrenaline and cold coffee, meticulously reviewing the will's legal language, assisted remotely by Thomas, who pulled every emergency legal string possible. We filed the will with the county probate office via emergency court channels, citing irrefutable evidence of potential asset destruction and malicious intent on Vera's part, a strong enough legal argument to force expedited processing. I signed the last necessary document just before dawn broke over the city. The next morning I arrived at the estate precisely at 8:05 a.m., Thomas calmly by my side. Just as Vera and her hired movers, large imposing men with clipboards, were beginning to aggressively clear the study, treating my father's books with criminal carelessness. Vera, wearing a victorious synthetic smile and an expensive silk robe, was directing the removal of the rarest, most expensive first editions, the very heart of my father's intellectual legacy. I walked into the study, calm, professional, and entirely in control, the probate filing notice clutched tightly in my hand. "Good morning, Vera," I said, my voice steady and firm, cutting directly through the noise of the boxes. "I'm afraid your moving plans are temporarily and permanently suspended by court order." She turned, annoyance darkening her features. "Don't be ridiculous, Eleanor. This is my house now. Get out of the way before I call security," she snapped, pulling out her own phone. That was the moment of full, definitive, public confrontation. I smiled serenely, a genuine smile of victory, and handed the official probate filing notice to the confused head mover, instructing them to cease all work immediately due to a binding court order. Vera's initial annoyance quickly escalated into a spectacular, theatrical eruption of pure, unadulterated fury that shook the study's windows. She snatched the document from the mover, scanning it rapidly, her face turning a blotchy, alarming red as she instantly recognized the official county court seal and the words, "Final Testament." "This is a fraud. A complete lie. Alistair lost the will months ago. You forged this, you greedy little tramp," she shrieked hysterically, her synthetic control dissolving instantly into raw, ugly chaos. Thomas stepped forward, cool, measured, and utterly professional, presenting a copy of the legally filed will document itself. "The will was filed an hour ago, Vera, and it is entirely valid. Your husband did not lose it. He was a classic scholar. He merely preferred an allegorical hiding place against theft." The hook. She demanded to know exactly where the will had been hidden, unable to comprehend the intellectual solution. I simply pointed to the empty space on the shelf where The Great Gatsby had been, emphasizing the large fiction label. The stunning revelation that she, the self-proclaimed mistress of the house, had spent 2 weeks searching every obvious hiding spot while the key lay in a library book literally under her nose, was the first delicious taste of her humiliating defeat. The stakes rose again. She vowed instantly to contest the will on the absurd grounds of undue influence and my alleged emotional instability. The subsequent legal battle moved swiftly and publicly to the courtroom, a highly charged public affair that relentlessly tested my emotional limits and resources. Vera's defense was based on a simple venomous narrative. I, the intellectually obsessed daughter, had manipulated a grieving, isolated father into forging a new will, hidden only in obscure literary codes to spite her and exclude her. It was a vicious, public assault on my sanity and my character. Thomas countered this malicious narrative by presenting the flawless authenticity of the will, which included the verification of the 2 independent, respected witnesses. But the ultimate twist, the final, unassailable piece of evidence, was the meticulously documented testimony of the Manuscript Club. Thomas called each elderly member to the stand, one by one, to recite their specific memorized paragraph of the will, confirming Alistair's final wishes under oath. The spectacle was unprecedented, turning the courtroom into an academic theater of shocking truth that the media adored, ensuring Vera's shame would be widely reported. The sight of Mr. Fitzwilliam, a tiny man with a surprisingly booming voice and tweed jacket, standing stoically in the witness box reciting a philosophical passage from Siddhartha and then confirming it was a piece of my father's final testament, was devastating to Vera's case. She couldn't attack their professional credibility. They were universally respected pillars of the academic community, each independently wealthy, non-biased, and beyond professional reproach. Her flustered lawyer tried desperately to cross-examine them on the absurdity of hiding a legal document in a public library book, claiming intellectual dishonesty. This futile effort allowed Thomas to introduce the authenticated digital copy of the cryptic notebook, exposing the entire ingenious game Alistair had played and the compelling, documented reason why. The emotional core was palpable. My father's brilliant intellect, even in death, was relentlessly defending me and strategically exposing her greed. The ultimate payoff. I was no longer fighting merely for money. I was fighting to prove that my father was neither senile nor easily swayed, but sharp, protective, and fully in control of his life and legacy until the very end, confirming the deep bond we shared. Vera, realizing her lawyer was losing disastrously and publicly, launched a desperate, foolish personal attack from her own table, shouting wild, unfounded accusations that I had stolen her diamond jewelry during the funeral wake. This unhinged outburst proved her genuine instability and malice, exactly what she had falsely accused me of. The judge, visibly annoyed and tired of her continuous theatrics, issued a final stern warning. The next day, Thomas delivered the irrefutable kill shot. He called Silas, the final, crucial witness and keeper of the deepest secret, to the stand. Silas, the elderly gentleman from the bookstore, testified under oath that my father had explicitly stated the intricate code was necessary because Vera had previously attempted to forge his signature on a medical power of attorney document while he was hospitalized and severely weakened. The stakes soared into criminal territory, the air thrumming with gasps and media interest. This was not just mere greed. This was a calculated, documented attempt at criminal theft and exploitation of a vulnerable adult, a clear line crossed long before the will was hidden. The new, shocking revelation of Vera's attempted forgery, subtly proven through Alastair's coded language and Silas's unwavering testimony, changed the entire legal landscape irreversibly and immediately. Her case for undue influence collapsed instantly and completely under the weight of her own confirmed crime. She was now facing potential criminal charges and was immediately placed under intense judicial scrutiny. The judge ruled against her contestation immediately, validating the will in its entirety and publicly condemning her actions. My victory was absolute, decisive, and complete. Vera received only her minimal, necessary annuity, but she was permanently and legally barred from accessing the main estate trust, which was fully under my control. The emotional core was profound closure. My father had known exactly who she was and had protected me not just with money, but with undeniable forensic proof of her predatory character. The final triumph was affirmed. The entire estate, including the beloved library, belonged unequivocally to me. But the story wasn't quite over, and my father's genius held one final, magnificent signature surprise that only I would ever truly appreciate. My father's notebook, the original literary map, held one final, cryptic entry marked Fiction, Aftermath. This was the ultimate twist, the final, elegant punchline of his grand design. A series of obscure offshore account numbers listed beneath an ominously underlined quote about surveillance from George Orwell's dystopian novel 1984. The message, once decoded, was chillingly clear. My father, anticipating Vera's attempts to hide or claim every asset, had created a substantial, completely secret safety net. Funds Vera believed were permanently destroyed in a failed, long-ago investment. I realized the minimal annuity Vera received was financially financed solely by those very secret accounts, meaning she was now financially dependent on the very truth-seeker she had tried to ruin. The financial setup was a stroke of pure genius and the deepest, most sustained form of precise, elegant revenge. I had full legal control of the massive main estate, and Vera had a minimal, fixed income managed entirely by the trust one now oversaw. She was effectively drawing her entire allowance from Alastair's most secret funds she thought she had successfully manipulated him into losing years ago. This was not cruelty but precise, absolute, elegant control. She would live comfortably and securely, but every single cent she spent would be a silent, perpetual reminder that she failed utterly, and that my father's superior intellect had defeated her greed even from the grave. The emotional payoff of this final, masterful twist was immense and satisfyingly complete. I sold the library, not out of a need to liquidate the assets, but to fund the Alastair Vance Foundation for Literary Preservation, dedicated to restoring historic library collections across the country. The foundation was structured to perpetually manage the first editions, rare manuscripts, and literary artifacts, ensuring my father's intellectual legacy was preserved, safe from Vera's grasping reach forever. My inheritance was transformed into a powerful, philanthropic mission, turning his personal protection into a public good for the entire literary community. I never saw Vera again after the final court hearing. She was bound completely by the legal terms of the minimal annuity and the overwhelming public shame of her exposed criminal intent. I was finally profoundly free. I often returned to the local library, pulling out The Great Gatsby from the fiction shelf, admiring the subtle brilliance and genius of the code. The truth, as my father taught me in his final great lesson, was always hidden in the most unexpected story, and the best legacy is always the one you earn.